twins with extreme deformities. What occurs when siblings wed one another? The biological repercussions of consanguineous unions remain among history's most unsettling chapters, particularly across multiple generations. Deep within West Virginia's Appalachian Mountains existed a community forgotten by time. The year was 1937. The nation was still grappling with recovery from the Great Depression. While major cities showed early signs of economic revival, the isolated valleys and steep Appalachian slopes formed a separate world where families lived by traditions handed down for generations. One such lineage was the Blackwood family. Settled in the region since the late 18th century when the first European pioneers traversed the Appalachians, the Blackwoods were known for their chosen seclusion. As decades passed and other families migrated cityward seeking opportunity, the Blackwood stayed, becoming a genetic island amidst the mountains. The Blackwood clan was always regarded with suspicion by nearby town residents, reports Dr. Thomas Harrison, a University of West Virginia historian who dedicated decades to studying the region's isolated communities. They seldom descended from the mountain except to trade furs and crafts for essentials. Marriage within the family grew common, not by deliberate choice, but through geographical and social inevitability. The Blackwood property was a closed world. A single winding, treacherous dirt road provided the only access, making visits rare, especially during harsh mountain winters. The main house, a two-story wooden structure built by original patriarch Isaiah Blackwood, had been expanded over years to accommodate the growing family. Small cabins housing various family branches surrounded it, forming a tiny familial settlement. Sarah and Joseph Blackwood, first cousins, married in 1915. Like numerous relatives before them, they perceived nothing wrong with this union. To them, it simply continued a family pattern. The couple's initial children were born without obvious issues, though some displayed shorter stature and mild learning difficulties. Then in 1929, as the Great Depression began, Sarah gave birth to twins, Nina and Edward. From birth, something was evidently wrong. The local doctor, who rarely visited the community, was urgently summoned. What he witnessed left him profoundly disturbed, as recorded in his medical diary discovered decades later. "Never have I witnessed such deformities in newborns. The children exhibit severe cranial malformations with disproportionately large heads. Their upper limbs are underdeveloped and both seem incapable of normal sucking. I fear survival beyond a few days is unlikely. I strongly suspect the cause is the parents' consanguineous union compounded by prior generations of marriages between close relatives." Defying all medical expectations, Eleanor and Edward survived. Subsequent years revealed severe developmental delays. They never achieved basic milestones like sitting, crawling, or speaking. Their heads continued growing abnormally while their bodies remained fragile and underdeveloped. The condition of the Blackwood twins was likely a severe form of hydrocephalus combined with other genetic anomalies resulting from prolonged consanguinity, explains Dr. Melissa Carter, a geneticist at Johns Hopkins University. When close relatives bear children, it drastically increases the probability of harmful recessive genes emerging. With multiple generations of consanguineous marriage, these effects can become devastating. The twins' birth marked a turning point for the Blackwoods. Sarah sank into deep depression, unable to accept her children's condition. Joseph, in turn, retreated further into isolation, forbidding contact between the family and the outside world. It was within this context of extreme seclusion that an event occurred, forever altering the Blackwood family's fate, something so disturbing it remained a whispered secret for decades in neighboring communities. The twins, now 8 years old in 1937, required constant care. Unable to walk or communicate, they were entirely dependent on relatives. The situation bred growing family tension, especially between Sarah and Joseph. Discussions grew increasingly frequent and heated. On one particularly cold January night, as a snowstorm further isolated the property, a couple's argument escalated to unprecedented levels. Screams echoed through the main house, waking other family members. "This isn't natural. Look at them. Look what we've done." Sarah was heard shouting, according to later accounts from one of the couple's nephews. The next morning, with the storm finally subsided, a horrific scene awaited the family. Sarah had vanished with the twins. Only tracks in the fresh snow led toward a nearby cliff's edge. What transpired that night remains among the darkest episodes in the Blackwood family history, a tragic testament to the devastating consequences possible after decades of consanguineous marriage. Ensure you're subscribed to this channel. The truth about isolated family lineages in rural America is revealed here with historical and scientific details unavailable elsewhere. Your subscription is essential for us to continue investigating these cases history attempted to forget. The Blackwood family story neither began nor concluded with the tragedy of Sarah and her twin children. To fully comprehend what led to that fateful 1937 winter night, we must look further back, examining how this pattern of isolation and consanguinity formed. Patriarch Isaiah Blackwood reached the Appalachian Mountains in 1792, fleeing accusations of heterodox practices in New England. A taciturn, suspicious man, Isaiah believed the outside world was corrupt. Only in isolation could his family preserve what he termed spiritual and physical purity. Isaiah Blackwood exemplifies a leader using isolation as a control tool, explains Dr. Rebecca Johnson, an anthropologist specializing in closed communities. Historical archives suggest expulsion from 3 different communities before finding mountain refuge, always for imposing extreme views on family segregation. In personal notes discovered in a hidden house chest only in the 1970s, Isaiah wrote, "Our lineage must remain pure, unmixed with outsiders. Our blood strength depends on it." This distorted view passed to subsequent generations as unquestionable dogma. By the 3rd generation, Blackwoods rarely married outside the family. Cousin marriages became standard, with occasionally closer unions. Problems emerged gradually. 1850s local documents noted Blackwood children displaying concerning peculiarities, smaller statures, vision issues, cognitive difficulties. But the family attributed these to curses or divine trials, never questioning marital practices. Here we see a classic example of how isolation can lead to genetically dangerous practices, states Dr. Howard Miller, a Princeton University geneticist. Consanguinity effects are cumulative. One generation of cousin marriage may have minimal impact. But repeated over 5, 6, or 7 generations, serious genetic anomaly risks increase exponentially. Returning to Joseph and Sarah Blackwood, first cousins and direct descendants of 6 consanguineous generations, the stage was set for genetic catastrophe. When Sarah conceived for the 3rd time in 1928, she had already borne 2 children showing mild consanguinity effects, Michael, with 6 fingers per hand, and Ruth, with learning difficulties. The twin pregnancy proved exceptionally difficult. Sarah endured severe nausea throughout gestation, gaining little weight. Delivery occurred during a snowstorm, preventing the doctor's arrival, assisted only by older family women. Eleanor was born first, Edward followed 20 minutes later. The shock was immediate. Beyond disproportionately large heads, the babies displayed multiple deformities, widely spaced eyes, fissured lips, fused fingers. More disturbing was the twins mirroring each other. Eleanor had more pronounced right side deformities, Edward presented them on the left. This phenomenon, known as genetic complementarity, is particularly concerning in twins from consanguineous unions, explains Dr. Carter. It's as if compromised genetic material distributed between both fetuses, creating mirrored malformation patterns. It's extremely rare but well documented medically, especially in genetically isolated populations. As the twins aged, their conditions grew more challenging. At 3, they still couldn't sit unsupported. At 5, they hadn't developed comprehensible speech, though they seemed to understand simple commands. Most disturbing was their extraordinary bond. When separated, even by a wall, they became extremely agitated, emitting distressing screams until reunited. This connection type between monozygotic twins is common in healthy pairs. But with compromised neurological development, it can manifest more intensely, observes Dr. William Tennant, a pediatric neurologist who studied the scarce Blackwood twins' medical records decades later. Reports suggest Eleanor and Edward possibly shared nonverbal communication other family members couldn't comprehend. The twins' condition gradually deteriorated. At 7, Edward developed frequent seizures. Eleanor developed severe scoliosis, further hindering her limited mobility. Caregiving burden fell primarily on Sarah, as Joseph spent increasing time away working family fields or hunting. A distant cousin, Daniel Blackwood, occasionally visiting with supplies, left a disturbing account in his November 1936 personal diary, "Visited Joseph and Sarah today. The situation worsens each visit. The children are larger, more difficult to carry, but equally dependent. Sarah resembles her own ghost, sunken, empty eyes. When I mentioned taking the twins to a Charleston specialist, Joseph exploded, "No outsider will touch my children. I fear what might happen in that house." The closest neighbors, the Patterson family living roughly 5 kilometers away, reported hearing increasingly frequent screams from the Blackwood property winter 1936-37. Once, Martha Patterson found Sarah wandering alone in the forest, incoherently muttering. She repeated something about cleansing the blood and ending the suffering, Martha later reported. "I tried taking her home, but she refused. I should have insisted more. Perhaps I could have prevented what followed." The fateful 1937 winter was among the most severe ever recorded in the Appalachians. Successive snowstorms further isolated the already reclusive Blackwoods. Within this context of extreme isolation, unbearable psychological pressure, and absent external support, disaster became inevitable. The morning after Sarah and the twins disappeared dawned clear and cold. Snow had stopped, leaving an immaculate white layer covering the property. Joseph's younger brother, Thomas, first noticed tracks leading from the main house toward the cliff called Devil's Leap, an over 80-meter freefall to the rocky river below. "Something's wrong," Thomas told his brother in the kitchen. "Sarah and the children aren't inside, and footprints lead to the cliff." A frantic search followed. Joseph, Thomas, and 2 cousins tracked the prints. They were clearly visible, adult footprints accompanied by drag marks suggesting Sarah carried or dragged the incapacitated twins. The tracks ended abruptly at the cliff edge. No struggle signs existed, just compacted snow as if someone stood there a while. "She stood here," Joseph murmured, kneeling. "She stood here looking down." Body searches began immediately, but conditions were nearly impossible. The river was partially frozen, bank snow-covered, steep terrain dangerously treacherous. 3 days later, they found the first body, little Edward, trapped between rocks roughly half a kilometer downstream. His body was remarkably cold-preserved, eyes open, staring at the grey winter sky. Elelanina's body was found next day farther downstream, almost entirely snow-covered on riverbanks. Sarah remained missing another 2 weeks. Their final discovery shocked everyone. Her body wasn't in the river or its banks, but in a small cliff face cave about 20 meters below the top. Somehow, she survived the initial fall, dragging herself to the cave shelter before succumbing, likely to combined injuries and extreme cold exposure. Most disturbing was what they found with her, a diary protected in a waterproof bag containing her last words. Pages were blood and tear-stained, but text remained legible. "May God forgive my actions. I could no longer bear watching my angels suffer." Each day worsened. "Edward had 3 seizures yesterday. Elelanina won't stop crying. I know it's our fault. The blood is cursed. Generations of sin brought us here. I tried loving my children best I could, but love isn't enough against what we've done. Now I understand what my grandmother tried telling me before marrying Joseph, the blood needs new life. I didn't listen. No one listened. Now my babies pay the price. They have no hope in this world. I can only pray they find peace in the next. May God mercy our souls." Local authorities investigated, but in such isolated late 1930s communities, family tragedies rarely received more than superficial examination. The official verdict was accidental death, though everyone involved knew it was clear maternal despair culminating in unimaginable tragedy. Joseph Blackwood never recovered. Subsequent months saw increased reclusivity, often sleeping in the twins' empty room. Neighbors reported hearing him talking as if the children remained. The Blackwood story represents among the most extreme examples of prolonged consanguinity impact, states Dr. Miller. This case proves particularly tragic because, unlike some isolated communities practicing consanguineous marriage for specific cultural or religious reasons, the Blackwoods seem victims of geographical isolation and founder paranoia, leading to generations of practices with devastating consequences. If this story tightens your heart, you're not alone. Comment: the blood needs new life. Sarah's grandmother's phrase carries powerful scientific truth many isolated communities discovered too late. Your comment helps maintain this vital consanguinity risk discussion. The Blackwood twins case might have remained merely tragic local episode without someone's arrival forever changing understanding of that isolated community's reality. In September 1937, just 8 months post-tragedy, young Dr. Robert Carlson arrived in Millerville, the nearest town to the Blackwood property. Freshly graduated from Johns Hopkins University, Carlson chose rural work through a federal New Deal program bringing medical assistance to remote regions. Curious and idealistic, Dr. Carlson soon heard rumors about the Mountain family and their strange children. Initially attributing stories to local superstition, while treating a Patterson family member for pneumonia, he heard first-hand Blackwood accounts and the recent Sarah twins tragedy. As a doctor, I cannot ignore what appears clear severe genetic problems, he wrote in his professional diary. If generations of close relative marriage rumors are true, this family represents significant scientific case study and preventable human tragedy with proper medical intervention. Dr. Carlson didn't realize his arrival would begin among the most comprehensive United States consanguinity studies ever conducted. With patience and persistence, he built relationships with more accessible Blackwood members, mainly Thomas, Joseph's brother, who occasionally shopped in town. His trust-gaining efforts were extraordinary, comments Dr. Elizabeth Winters, a Columbia University medical historian. When distance between medical professionals and rural communities was enormous, Carlson demonstrated remarkable sensitivity, gradually approaching and offering non-judgmental help. Dr. Carlson's records, later published in the 1952 American Journal of Human Genetics with names changed for privacy, reveal the slow problem discovery process. Initially, he obtained permission only to examine some family children for a free checkup. Findings deeply alarmed him. Of 17 initially examined children, 14 displayed some physical or cognitive anomaly: fused fingers, syndactyly, underdeveloped jaws, micrognathia, severe strabismus, partial to total deafness, varying intellectual impairment degrees. Nearly all showed significantly below average height for their ages. The pattern matches multiple inbreeding generations, his notes state. Observed problems clearly result from harmful recessive gene expression that would remain dormant in a genetically diverse population. Concentrating these genes through successive consanguineous marriages created high-risk situations for each new family child. Over time, especially after gaining Thomas Blackwood's trust, Dr. Carlson accessed complete family history via parish records, birth certificates, and oral accounts. He reconstructed the Blackwood family tree, documenting 7 consanguineous marriage generations, including several first-cousin unions and at least 2 uncle-niece marriages. What Carlson documented was essentially an involuntary human genetics experiment, explains Dr. Miller. In isolated populations like the Blackwoods with generational close relative marriage, recessive genetic disease frequency can drastically increase. Normally, these deleterious genes stay hidden because needing 2 gene copies, one from each parent, manifests condition. When both parents share recent ancestors, carrying identical harmful recessive gene probability rises significantly. The Elena and Edward twins case represented this phenomenon's extreme. Based on available descriptions and scarce medical records, modern specialists believe they likely suffered a rare congenital hydrocephalus, craniosynosis, premature cranial suture closure, and multiple other malformation combination from deleterious recessive gene expression. This story's most tragic aspect isn't biological inevitability, but direct result of avoidable social practices, states Dr. Johnson. Geographical isolation worsened by self-imposed isolation transformed circumstantial tendency into devastating family dogma. Joseph Blackwood, still devastated by loss, initially refused speaking with Dr. Carlson. Only in 1939, nearly 2 years post-tragedy, did he finally agree. This meeting's account, preserved in Carlson's notes, proves moving. Met JB today at his home. The man seems to have aged 20 years in 2 completely grey hair, hunched posture, distant gaze. The house is abandoned state. Mentioning my visit's reason, discussing close relative marriage risks, he initially shut down. After silent time, he began discussing the twins. They had eyes just like mine, he said, even though he couldn't speak properly. Edward laughed just like my father. Can you imagine that, doctor, seeing your own father in a child's eyes who can barely lift his head? And Elelenina, she held my finger with such strength. So small, but such strength. When I asked if he knew cousin marriage could cause children problems, he replied, my parents were cousins. Their parents too. Everyone seemed normal. How could I have known? This is the fundamental tragedy, ignorance passing generations combined with isolation and outside world distrust. When I tried explaining heredity basic principles, he interrupted, it's too late for me now, doctor, but maybe not for others. Talk to my brother. Talk to the young ones. And that's precisely what Dr. Carlson did. Subsequent years involved tirelessly working with younger Blackwood family members, educating about consanguinity risks and helping establish neighboring community connections. His work extended beyond the Blackwoods. He identified several other isolated Appalachian families with similar, though less extreme, consanguineous marriage patterns. The 1940s brought significant regional changes. World War II and subsequent industrialization drew many mountain youth to cities. Better road construction reduced geographical isolation. Electricity reached previously isolated areas. Perhaps most importantly, medical knowledge became more accessible. For the Blackwoods, change proved gradual but significant. Thomas, Joseph's brother, became a vocal advocate against relative marriages, openly sharing his family's tragic history as warning. Several young Blackwoods married outside the family, introducing necessary genetic diversity. Joseph Blackwood never fully recovered. He lived reclusively until his 1952 death at 64. Final years allowed Dr. Carlson to document complete family history provided real names changed in any publication. Joseph understood too late for his own family that their story could save others, Carlson wrote. Our last meeting, he told me, tell the truth, doctor. Tell it so no one else endures what we endured. The Blackwood family legacy extends far beyond personal tragedy. Dr. Carlson's study, published as Effects of Prolonged Consanguinity in Isolated Appalachian Populations, became a medical population genetics literature reference. Although exact names and locations were altered for privacy, compiled data offered valuable heredity mechanism insights and specific risks associated with recurrent consanguineous marriage. Carlson's work was pioneering, states Dr. James Wilson, a Harvard University medical genetics professor. Pre-human genome mapping, when genetic understanding remained rudimentary, he managed documenting inheritance patterns and clearly demonstrating how certain conditions manifested increased frequency in high consanguinity lineages. Dr. Carlson's collected data showed within the Blackwood family, congenital anomaly incidence was approximately 17 times general population higher. Most common conditions included polydactyly, extra fingers 23% of children. Syndactyly, fused fingers 18%. Microcephaly, abnormally small head 12%. Hydrocephalus, brain fluid accumulation 7%. Varying degree intellectual disability, tilde 45%. Congenital deafness, 19%. Cardiac malformations, 14%. What makes Carlson's study so valuable was tracking the family over a decade, documenting how new gene introduction through unrelated marriages began reducing these conditions' incident subsequent generations, explains Dr. Carter. Indeed, the 1940 to 1955 generation, post-Carlson's educational efforts, showed dramatically dropped congenital anomaly incidence. Of 28 children born this period, only 6 displayed any previously common family conditions, all milder manifestations. The Blackwood story eventually transcended purely medical realm, becoming anthropologist, sociologist, and historian case study interested in isolated community dynamics and cultural belief impacts on marital practices. What happened to the Blackwoods wasn't simply individual decision results, but complex geographical isolation, specific cultural beliefs, and scientific information lack interweaving, observes Dr. Johnson. This prompts questioning how many other global isolated communities may face similar problems today. Indeed, modern studies identified several global populations where consanguineous marriage remains common, often from cultural traditions or geographical isolation. Some communities show first-cousin marriage rates reaching 20 to 50% all marital unions. Modern science allows understanding specific risks and quantifying them precisely, explains Dr. Wilson. We now know isolated first-cousin marriage increases congenital anomaly risk approximately 4 to 7% above population baseline. This risk, although significant, is manageable with adequate genetic counseling. Real danger emerges when these marriages recur multiple generations, like the Blackwoods case. The Blackwood property fate reflects family changes. The main house, where Joseph lived final reclusive years, was abandoned after his death, eventually succumbing to elements. Lands divided among descendants, many choosing selling portions and moving urbanly. In 1972, Thomas Blackwood Jr., Joseph's nephew and among first family members obtaining university education, established the Blackwood Foundation for Genetic Studies. Using resources from partial family land sales, the foundation funds rare genetic disease research and offers free genetic counseling isolated rural area families. "It's our way transforming family tragedy into positivity," Thomas Jr. declared in a 1975 interview. "If knowledge from our family's suffering can prevent others enduring similar, then something good emerged from all this." The twins Elelynina and Edward Blackwood, whose brief, difficult lives catalyzed such significant changes, were buried in a small property family cemetery. For decades, their graves remained simple stone-marked. In 1997, the 60th death anniversary, family descendants erected a granite monument inscribed, Elelynina and Edward Blackwood, 1929 to 1937. Their brief lives illuminated shadows. May their legacy be knowledge and understanding. Dr. Robert Carlson continued Appalachian work until 1965 retirement. His Blackwood and similar family studies led creating specific isolated community educational programs, addressing not only consanguinity issues but other common population health problems. In 1983, a PBS-produced documentary titled Isolated Lineages, The Genetics of the Mountains presented an anonymous Blackwood story version, bringing national attention to isolated community health issues. The Emmy-winning program stimulated significant rural health service improvements. The Blackwood story, although profoundly tragic, also represents a powerful example of how scientific knowledge can transform destinies, concludes Dr. Winters. What began as ignorance and isolation narrative transformed into education and change catalyst. It reminds that even darkest circumstances hold learning and growth potential. Today, Blackwood descendants scatter countrywide, many unaware of their full family history. Those knowing carry not only tragedy memory but also pride in how their family eventually embraced knowledge and worked transforming legacy. As Dr. Carlson observed, final notes, human history brims with ignorance leading to suffering examples, but equally abundant are knowledge redeeming even darkest life chapters examples. The Blackwoods exemplify both. If you watched until here, you appreciated this story. Comment "I watched until here" so I can know you and identify who genuinely enjoys this channel's stories. Don't forget liking and sharing this video with potentially interested people. Your subscription is fundamental for us to continue revealing these history attempted to forget cases. Science and history have much to teach about consanguinity practice consequences. Bringing these lessons to light is our duty.